Hello everyone. Okay, I hope we're all well and happy. For this session, I thought I'd talk about coursework and how to actually write the thing. So at the moment, you should all be doing research, so you should all be reading various books. You should all be using that log to write on, like an evaluation really, about what were the views of the historian or historians mentioned in the book you've used. What evidence did they use? What primary sources did the books which you've been reading have in them? And then do the whole Tudor analysis of them. What I thought I'd do in this session is talk about actually writing the thing. What we'd like to do for the first lesson after the summer holidays is to do about 4,000 words as like a pre-rough draft, if you like. What I want to talk about today is kind of talk a little bit about that, but also the final product and how to actually write it. I have made an A4 Word document yesterday where I kind of went through how to write it. So I'm basically just going to talk through that document. So what I suggest you do is on the email I send out, open up the document and listen to me waffling on about it. And hopefully that will give you some idea about how it should be written. Okay, so firstly, there's a few things which you already know about the coursework. The final draft needs to be 4,000 words long. It needs to have references, i.e. footnotes. At the moment, if you don't know how to do footnotes and things, I'll do that in another video. But just make sure when you're taking notes down at the moment from your reading, you're down the page numbers and things like that. It needs to include and discuss the different views from historians. Okay, it keeps going light and dark. You need to also include primary sources and analyse those primary sources. And obviously you need to have introduction and conclusion. So what I've done on this document is for the structure bit, I've kind of tried to give some examples. So if you're doing a normal essay, say you're doing a normal essay in the exam, the question was, assess the reasons why Henry VII, our old friend, was able to secure the throne. You'd probably do your introduction, wouldn't you? And you'd probably say X was the main reason why he did it. You'd then probably have a paragraph about financial ways he secured his throne, and you'd probably talk about bond and recognizances, wouldn't you? You'd probably do a paragraph about how he was quite lucky that most of the mighty subjects were dead by the time he won the Battle of Bosworth. You might do a paragraph on, I don't know, his decision to marry Elizabeth of York, perhaps to try and heal the nation, or something like that. And they'd also have a nice conclusion. Now, if you think about it, there's lots of things in the essay that you probably won't discuss, which you know about. So in terms of finances, yes, you've got bonds and recognizances, but you haven't anywhere, have you, been able to talk about getting more money in by improving trade as a way to secure himself and make deals with foreign nations. You haven't been able to get anything in there about increasing crown lands in order to increase his wealth, that type of stuff. So for a normal essay for the exam, you got your three main points, haven't you? And you can deal with the most important. Now, if this was 4,000 words for a piece of coursework, okay, you could talk about all those things, couldn't you? And so for that reason, for financial controls, actually, you could do several paragraphs just about finances. You almost need to think about the different reasons, if you like, for whatever your coursework is on, the reasons why the American Civil War took place, or the reasons why Alfred the Great can be seen as great, or whatever. You will probably, for each reason, have 3 or 4 different paragraphs, which are like sub things towards that reason, aren't they? So looking at this Henry VII one I just mentioned, if you do it for your coursework, actually, you'll probably end up having 3 or 4 paragraphs on finances. You'd probably do one about bond and recognizances. You'd probably do one about increasing the amount of royal land, and have lots of examples in. You'd probably do one about improving trade, therefore getting more money. Okay, so it's like finances. It's almost like a little, don't use subheadings in your coursework. It's almost like a little subheading, isn't it, of 3 or 4 paragraphs. A family of paragraphs, you might say, on that one theme. So about overmighty subjects as another theme. Again, there's probably 3 or 4 paragraphs on that. So you could do one about why they were a problem in the past. You could do a paragraph about what happened to some overmighty subjects at Bosworth. And you could do one about how Henry was quite keen to make sure he didn't have any future overmighty subjects, giving Uncle Jasper Tudor not very much, etc., etc. Okay. So I've been talking on the phone's my voice is going. So when you're doing your plan for your coursework, what you'll probably do, say you're doing it on the American Civil War, what caused it, you'll probably think, well, slavery was a reason, and there's probably 3 or 4 sub-paragraphs on slavery, and you've probably got economic differences between North and South United States, and there's a couple of paragraphs you could write on that, different kind of sub-themes to that particular point. You've got politics of the latter days of the USA pre-Civil War, so you've got stuff on there, the election of Lincoln, etc., etc. Okay, if you're doing some reasons why Hitler came to power, again, you'll probably do a theme about, well, the economic problems which Germany faced, and there's probably several sub-paragraphs within that, isn't there? So you could do, consequences on the economy caused by the Treaty of Versailles. You've probably got, I don't know, one about problems caused by the Wall Street crash in Germany, and kind of those, and one about how Hitler tried to exploit the immediate economic problems which Germany faced. You probably have another reason for why Hitler came to power being, I don't know, his political skills, and then you probably got 3 or 4 sub-paragraphs based around that. So what you want to do is, when you've done a good chunk of your reading and you've got kind of your points in mind, I would do like a big spider diagram. So say it was on why Hitler came to power in 1933. Well, actually, no, let's take it to this one, because I'm not favouring any one particular coursework. Let's say you're doing it on why Henry VII was able to secure his throne. Write it in the middle, and then round the edge put on your 4 or 5 different reasons, and then think about what would my sub-reasons be as like little bullet points. So that would be the first thing I would do in terms of planning. Have a real think about, what are the different reasons why, in this case, Henry is able to secure the throne, or why the American Civil War took place, or why Martin Luther King was able to do X and Y, or why Alfred the Great can be considered great, or whatever. And then have a think about, from all your reading, well, I've got these economic reasons behind whatever it is. What are my little sub-reasons to do with the economy which help to explain that bigger reason? Okay, so that's your first job. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, and hopefully my using the Henry VII example helps a little bit with that. Then, of course, half the marks of the coursework are from historians and historians' views and how you evaluate them, and also about primary sources and how you've used primary sources and how you've evaluated primary sources. Essentially, the skills you've learnt doing Alexander II on historians, so all that stuff about this is a convincing view because, or that type of stuff, is that skill which the coursework is looking at crediting for the historians bit. And for the primary sources, it's the skills you learnt on the Tudors doing the primary sources, all that kind of, the provenance and all that kind of stuff, and does the facts fit what the source is saying? So what you need to do in your coursework is to include those skills throughout your coursework on a fairly regular basis. You should be talking about historians' views, where they agree, where they disagree. You should be trying to get in primary sources, and again, not just quoting them, but then evaluating them as well. So what I've done is I've done a paragraph where I've tried to show how to use historians' views. Okay, so if you have a look, so I put on here, imagine your coursework was on, assess how threatening rebellions were to the Tudor dynasty, 1485 to 1603. Okay, now imagine from your research, you're going to write a paragraph here about the rebellions of 1549. And imagine from your research, you discovered that David Starkey said that the Tudors were never threatened. I don't know whether he did or not, by the way, I just made it up. And let's say that you found a source from Professor Liz Smith, who argued that Kent was a really serious rebellion and really threatened the dynasty. Okay, so you've got there 2 historians, haven't you, who disagree with each other. So I've then written a paragraph out. Okay, I kind of cut short of it. I put blah 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 in the middle, so I didn't want to explain all the ins and outs of it. It's the bit about where the historians I was interested in, and you will notice that I put the footnotes in for these historians. And on what is page 4 of the document, I've kind of broken it down to my use of historian. So if you have a look at that bit, in red, I put the view of one historian in. David Starkey has argued that the rebellions of 1549 were not a serious threat to Edward VI. Indeed, he argued, quote, blah, 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 blah. So I've put in, I haven't had, the view of historian number 1. I've then in green put in some points from my own knowledge to say why David Starkey might be correct. This view has some merit because the rebels were mainly upset about enclosures, and their main aim was to get rid of enclosures, not Edward VI. Okay, now sometimes when you're doing your paragraphs, you might not have two that disagree. You might have just David Starkey's view, in which case what I've just talked about there has been a little bit of analysis. I said this is David Starkey's view, and this is the evidence which backs up David Starkey. Therefore, his view is quite good. So if you didn't have a second historian who disagreed, just had the one that agrees with the point you're making, that is fine. Okay, you probably want a bit more on that green, a bit more of your own knowledge, but you can use it that way. It is better though, and you will get higher marks if you can show historians who disagree, and then for you to say why you support one over the other. You don't have to do it every time you meet a historian in your coursework, but you do need to do it on, reasonably often in your coursework. So for this particular example, we've got David Starkey who argues this, and then I've put, however, Liz Smith disagrees with David Starkey. How dare she? Okay, as she's argued that the scale of the rebellions of 1549, which covered most of southern England, was a clear threat to the Tudor dynasty. Then in yellow or orange, then kind of said why I think Liz Smith has a better argument than David Starkey. Overall, the view of Smith is more convincing than Starkey because, and I put in the evidence to say why I think Smith is better than Starkey. Can you see, this is what you're doing, isn't it, essentially, when you're doing those historians in your Russia paper? Or you're not comparing in that way, are you, where you say, well, why is one better than the other? So, doing it that way gets you high marks. So that's why we've been trying to get to look at historians and where they disagree with each other. So hopefully that gives you some idea as to how you should do historians and where they disagree with each other. Okay, as I said, you might not always find them that disagree. Sometimes you might have them where they just agree with each other on something, which again is fine. But you do need, at least on a reasonably regular basis in your coursework, is to find them where they disagree and do a bit of a passage like that. Because when we're marking it, we can then put strong evaluation of historians, okay, which then helps justify the marks that we give to you. Okay, hope that kind of makes sense. Right, what about primary sources? Our old friends. Now, primary sources, again, you should be identifying these. You don't need great big long things. You don't need to go and find great big dusty manuscripts. It's the evaluation of them that you need to do, a bit like with the Tudors. Again, I've done a paragraph where I've included a primary source. Now, sometimes what you'll probably do is either to use a primary source to back up the view which you're making, or you might use a primary source kind of in conjunction with the historian. So what I've done in this paragraph is I've done it in conjunction with the historian to say why I think Liz Smith's view is better than David Starkey. So if you look through it, I've highlighted in red. So we've got David Starkey who argues this, Liz Smith argues that. And then I've put, this view is supported by the diary of Edward VI himself, who described how, quote, I was put into the Tower for safekeeping whilst the country was in uproar, unquote. Now, I've not had a chance to look in the actual text to see exactly what he said, but I know his source when we did those stuff before Easter, it says something along those lines, doesn't it? Okay, so you've got the quote, and then I've done my little bit of evaluation. Although Edward was a child at the time and may not have been fully aware of the events of 1549, so that's a bit of a downside to this source. It is valuable though, so here's a good thing about the source, as it advises to believe that he was threatened, as he's unlikely to have lied about being suddenly placed in the Tower of London at this time in his private diary. So I've done a little bit of evaluation, I haven't, of that primary source. So look, the downside is written by a child. The upside is it's written by Edward himself, who experienced being put into the Tower of London. And why would he lie about this event in his diary? Why would he lie about this kind of weakness, if you like, of his regime in his own diary? Okay, and then what I've done, I've then said this evidence, along with Smith's argument that the rebellions were serious for the last 12 months, blah, 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 shows that Smith is better than Starkey. So can you see how I've tried to use the primary source there? Okay, and I've done a little bit of evaluation. So I've not just rewritten the source, which is what some people do. Okay, I've tried to evaluate it a little bit like in that choose away. So hopefully that this is giving you some idea as to how the paragraph should look and how to try and get these primary sources in there and the historians. You first of all do the reading, but be thinking about your plans and be thinking about in each of your themes, what are my little sub kind of paragraphs going to be on that particular theme. Okay, so look at the stuff I've done on Henry VII just here to see, hopefully you can relate to that, and then think about your own coursework and thinking actually, I've got this factor, and this factor to explain why Hitler came to power, the American Civil War took place, Alfred the Great was great, or whatever. What are my little sub kind of ones within that? What are my 3 or 4 sub financial points like, or my 3 or 4 sub political points or whatever? Okay, any problems, and then please do let me know. Okay,